I, Chair Hansen, call the Construction Industry Energy Board meeting of June 11th, 2024 to order at 9:31. Debbie, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Chair and representing the Mechanical Board, Jay Hansen.
Present, virtually.
Thank you. And Vice Chair, who is in the room, representing the Electrical and Elevator Board, Thomas Kyle.
Present.
And Walter Cottle said he may be late. So right now we're marking him excused. He represents the Mechanical Board. Representing the Electrical and Elevator Board, connected virtually, Ryan Richards.
Here.
Thank you. Gary Heikkinen, connected virtually, representing the Building Code Structures Board.
Here.
Thank you. Blake Shelide, representing the State Department of Energy, connected virtually.
Here.
Thank you, Blake. Matthew Letter, connected virtually, representing the Residential and Manufactured Structures Board.
Here.
Thank you, Matt. Tyrone Bergen, who is in the room, representing the State Plumbing Board.
Here.
And Mr. Chair, we do have a quorum.
Thank you, Debbie.
Yes, sir.
I, Chair Hansen, am going to rule the agenda in order of business to be approved unless there are any comments or changes from board members. Speak now or forever. Hold your peace. All right. Well, okay. They are our agenda in order of business is approved. Does anyone have any changes they would like to see to the draft minutes from our last meeting on April 10th? There's a lot of minutes. A lot of stuff was talked about. So hearing none, I'm going to rule those draft meeting minutes of April 10th, 2024 final. The next date for us to gather and meet is October 15th, 2024. And we will move on to item 2, public comment. Policy Analyst Pierre Sabat. Would you please address any public comment?
Thank you, Chair Hansen, members of the board. For the record, my name is Pierre Sabat, Policy Analyst with the division. As of this morning, we have no requests for public comment to the board today. If there's anyone online that did not sign up that would like to provide general public comment to the board, please state your name and for the record now. Hearing and seeing none, that concludes public comment today, Chair Hansen. Thank you.
Thank you. Reports and updates, section 3. Richard, do you have any items to address regarding the legislative update for this board?
Good morning, Chair Hansen, members of the committee. Richard Donovan on behalf of BCD. The legislative update is contained within the packet from your meeting. It's the same legislative update that all of you folks have received in your various other boards, so it contains the same information. I'm happy to go through it, but really I just wanted to see if there are any questions. I have no new information, but I'm happy to answer legislative questions if there are any. Otherwise, that's all I have for you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Richard. All right. Again, sticking with reports and updates, let's have an energy program update. Mark, what do you have for us?
Thank you, Chair Hansen, members of the board. Mark Heiser with the division, beginning with an energy program update. Several items we'd like to cover today. The first is dealing with prior note on House Bill 3409 and the work on embodied carbon in construction. The new staff member, Ann Geyer, is getting up to speed on working on the report that's due to the legislature on December 31st, 2024, to the interim committee of the Legislative Assembly related to the environment. As a reminder, just going through the language that was in 3409 about what the report, it's to include the department's findings and recommendations on options for and the feasibility of reducing greenhouse gas emissions that result from materials used in building construction. This will be based on the findings of the department. Also, studying the use of lower carbon building materials in the statewide building code or other applicable specialty codes, or other means for reducing greenhouse gas emissions attributed to building materials that the division identifies after consultation with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality. As part of this work, the division issued an RFP to find a consultant to help with research on this subject that would be used to develop the basis of our legislative report. Several very good bidders came in, and it was a really tough decision, but in the end, the contract was awarded to Rocky Mountain Institute, who is teaming with the New Buildings Institute. They're the successful bidders. We are beginning kickoff meetings actually this afternoon, and we'll be working together to prepare that report for the legislature in December. Also, the residential REACH code. The rulemaking is being wrapped up and is to be filed. The next version, or the residential REACH code, which will be, above and beyond Chapter 11 of the 2023 residential code, has 3 basic levels. One starts with being able to achieve the Energy Star home level for the new version of the Energy Star home. What comes with that is if you go through the program, the builder can receive a $2,500 federal tax credit, and there's a potential for working with Energy Trust of Oregon for potentially other incentives, but statewide anyone could get that $2,500. On top of that, it was looking at the Zero Energy Ready home, which is next level of efficiency above that, and builders who use that program can potentially get a $5,000 federal tax credit. And for builders who go a little bit more, there is the Passive House US program. They would be eligible, because it's required to meet the ZERH, Zero Ready Energy Home. They would also be able to get that $5,000 and potentially a higher level of other statewide incentives that go with that. That was approved by the residential board. The rulemaking is pretty much wrapped up now. One item that comes with that is a little update, is that the division has been working with the Earth Advantage and Northwest Energy Efficiency Alliance, along with our partners at ODE, to seek federal funding to expand the pool of available HERS raters, energy raters, who could do the ratings that come with the Energy Star homes, Zero Energy Ready homes, and some of these others. You need to have that ability to go through that program or an equivalent. So these, they're working on an ability to expand the number of raters in the state, especially looking to get more to our more remote rural areas where it's a little difficult to get someone there because of the it's sort of a chicken or egg in condition where you're looking to either, no one's going to use the HERS program unless there's somebody there to do it, and people aren't going to be there to be raters unless, so we're hoping that through the REACH code and this, that we can get higher efficiency buildings to people in more remote areas that are pretty common and available here in more in the valley and the more urban areas of the state. It's a test program that could possibly be expanded to other areas in the region. And again, it could also, for this board's edification, there are also Energy Star tax credits available for commercial multifamily residential buildings. So this would help get more staff out there and people who can help builders get that additional tax credit for commercial level residential dwellings, multifamily dwelling units. A little update about photovoltaics and solar ready items. There is a new guide available primarily for residential, but it's improving on previous guidance that had been once upon a time in the original old Oregon Solar Installations Specialty Code, I believe it was, on how to install on dwelling units to provide this, a better egress firefighter pathway. This does improve on what model code has. It allows for more flexibility in installation, allows builders and homeowners to actually put more solar on their roofs than they would if we had gone with the national model code. And it was closely worked on with fire departments and the fire services to make sure that everyone was happy with this, and also with the solar industry as well. As part of that, this came out of the fact that solar installation guidance had been, for a short period, only within the commercial structural code. So people were going from the residential book to the commercial book and back to the residential book and back and forth. The ORSC now has its own solar installation guidance because it's just a little, much more is happening, and it provides them with good guidance for that. Moving on, the division is continuing to expand training and additional technical bulletins, much like the one that was just mentioned, especially with outreach to building officials for more consistent application of the code. Currently, residential energy is our focus, but new commercial materials should be expected this fall as we move into the 90.1 2022, the 2024 OEESC. We're looking at available links. ComCheck, U.S. Department of Energy has a sort of training on how to use the new version of ComCheck. It's an online software only web-based version. It's required, the new version is required for use of 90.1 2022. It requires all users to, if you've been using ComCheck Web in the past, to use the new version, you've got to create a new login and password. For your old version won't work for ComCheck Web, so just letting people know that they'll have to work on that for the new code. We're hoping to use their guidance and get that posted online so that people can have an easy access to it on how to use the new ComCheck Web. Expect some additional guidance for the use of 90.1 2022. What we're doing for residential is sort of a guide for what you put in for application when you come in for permit. We're going to try and get a better guide for Oregon-based versions for input when you come into your local building office. We're looking for other links to other training that's available. The division, through some other federal grants, has worked with ASHRAE, International Co-Council, National Association of State and Energy Officers, and others on their developing guidance specifically for building officials as well. We're hoping to get that information sometime as that's getting developed. The funds were just released recently, and we're hoping they'll come up with additional pieces. Again, the division is going to try and review gaps or where we're getting lots of questions. That's what drives us to put out technical bulletins, and we'll hope to get more out there for people. That's it for the update on general energy update. Are there any questions from members of the board?
Yes, I have a couple. This is Thomas Kyle. Are these tax credits only federal?
These are the ones that are mentioned are the federal tax credits currently, yes. So they're available to anyone statewide versus what happens via Energy Trust of Oregon within the IOU territories for Pacific Power and PGE.
Yeah, and you mentioned builders, but is this to the owners or to the contractors?
The residential ones are to the contractors. So it encourages the contractor to go with advanced building techniques and get that out the door, yes. So it doesn't go to the homeowner. The builder has to apply for it.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right, Mark, I have a question about the raters. You mentioned certification of raters and increasing the population or the pool of the raters. Is this training that's offered by the division?
Thank you for the question, Chair Hansen. It's not division training. It's relative to the programs themselves, such as like HERS raters. This is what it's being expanded to do, is for those programs to be people who get certified through those programs themselves, not through the state. It's not. We handle mostly for building officials. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not notice. Apologize.
No worries. Hey, Mark, Gary Hickman, board member. Could you talk a little bit more about the work that RMI and NBI are going to be doing? Does this just have to do with embodied emissions in buildings?
Thank you, Gary. Mark Heiser with the division. Yes, Gary, this is the directive through the House bill was for the emissions related to the embodied carbon in the building materials themselves, yes. So it's not the emissions from the buildings, it's as part of the construction process. As we see that as the emissions relative to the operational is going down, there's an interest in reducing what goes into the construction side.
So is this a report making recommendations on what the state might do in this regard, either through BCD or ODO, something like that?
Yes, it is for developing findings on what options might be available. So whether it's looking at just EPDs for specific materials, whether it's in the code, whether it's outside of the code, how a process might come together. So different states and organizations, this is really coming up new, and everybody's trying to figure out how to do this. So we're looking at how that would fit within the Oregon structure for codes, for DEQ, for the state as a whole, how that might come into the construction industry through our boards that all the members here are part of. So,
yeah, Mark, I'm guessing you're probably aware of a new ash rate committee, SPC 240P. I happen to be a member on that committee to develop methodologies to quantify life cycle emissions of buildings, including embodied emissions. If you're not aware, there's, I think, some pretty good work going on there, especially on the embodied emissions side. Extremely complex. But got some great people on this committee, and the end result may be a standard that could work very well for the state. We're probably, it'll probably go out for its next public review. I don't know, later on this summer, fall maybe, but just to make you aware of some work that's going on.
thank you.
Thanks, Gary. Any other questions?
Yes, this is Thomas Kyle again. Mark, in order to qualify for these tax credits, is it more than just a local building inspector to certify that everything is done?
The work would be through the regular HERS rating process, so it would be a HERS rater or something similar to that, doing the process and turning the information into the Energy Star program or through the Zero Energy Ready Home program. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any others? Okay, we're going to stay with Mark, but we'll move on to subsection C. Some discussion about the anticipated adoption of 2024 OEESC.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. Once again, Mark Heiser with the division. Discussing about the use and training for ComCheck and other tools that are necessary for the use of 90.1 2022 under the 2024 OEESC. First, I'd like to remind everybody, of course, code adoption dates are really on a quarterly basis, and the final rule adoption date is going to be October 1st of this year. The July date was just not going to work out well for us. ComCheck is such a critical piece of this. Division staff has been working through quirks with the program, trying to make it work. Up until recently, the ComCheck Web had some issues with their servers. They had found out last month while we were meeting with some of the DOE staff that their servers had some bots on the system that had affected it. I think they were called aggressive crawlers was the description that I had for it. So things were going very slow. They have been updating their servers, going to a cloud-based system. It appears it's working much quicker now, but we want to make sure that that's working. We're still finding a few bugs that we want to make sure that the process is trying different building types, seeing whether we can, really get the forms and everything put together to make sure it works for everyone.
Thank you, Chair Hansen, members of the board. For the record, Pierre Sabah, Policy and also the Division. I just wanted to piggyback off of Mark's comments and say that, just to remind the board, we did do our public hearing for this rulemaking in March, so everything's taken care of. We are just hoping for the October 1st effective date after we file, assuming ComCheck is available. So just reiterating Mark's words. Thank you.
Thank you, Pierre. Once again, Mark Heiser with the board. So just wanted to go through that and let you know that we're really wanting to make sure we've got we've gone through enough test cases that when people turn stuff in to the local building department, it's good and working. And so this is the reason that we've extended the application date to October 1st instead of July 1 in just a few weeks. There will be new forms updating the 2021 forms will be available on the website. There will be hopefully some additional guidance on how to use and the new version of ComCheck available. And so with that, of course, April 1st of 2025 would become the mandatory date for the 2024 OEESC. And with that, if there are any questions from the board, I'd be happy to take those.
Questions? Moving on, subsection D, just some information and discussion relating to the Oregon Commercial Reach Code. And we'll stick with you again, Mark.
Thank you, Chair Hansen. Moving on with a working commercial energy code, of course, we would then begin work on the application of a commercial reach code. So going above and beyond, so with application of the 90.1 2022 under the OE as the 2024 Oregon Energy Efficiency Specialty Code. This process, we expect to be bringing that back to you in October to have this discussion, but we're looking to get a little inspiration from the board because it's a little harder than dealing with just the residential code that's in Oregon developed and probably pretty easy to deal with. Again, what we found is that in order to not only adopt a reach code, but to encourage its use, it would be nice to have something tied to incentives so that people will say, yeah, we want to use that. And this is a way of using the reach code and getting funds to, encourage builders to do this. Residential is easy, but there is not much tied to commercial construction that would be available statewide. Federal funding is available, like as I mentioned, for multifamily housing, but the focus of whether it's federal or state or Energy Trust of Oregon funds, the primary focus is really on existing buildings for most of the incentives that are out there. So we're sort of trying to plant the seed among the board to think about things that you would like to see in that reach code, what might be available. Does it become something solely for multifamily? Do we look for a way to do this? One thing that has been done in the past was looking at, the International Green Construction Code is sort of the next step of energy efficiency. And something that just came out from the feds, they have a new definition of zero emission buildings that might provide some guidance and also aligns with that. The new federal guidance says at a minimum, a zero emissions building would meet being energy efficient, where the building would be among the most efficient available. They then talk about not using on-site energy and then powered. Then once you make the building efficient, you then provide power from clean sources. In that guidance, the target is for new commercial construction would be to exceed standard 90.1 by 10%. Well, 90.1 is the basis for the 2024. It's pretty easy, and it aligns with what the IGCC Green Code normally has done. They have you get at least 10% better than code. And it also aligns with some earlier directives to the division under old Executive Order 1720, meet what the IGCC did. Getting 10% better than 90.1 is relatively easy to demonstrate and document if you're doing one of the energy modeling performance paths. If you're a bigger building, you probably will take the money, spend that extra money to go 10% better than code using an energy model. It's easy to build into the construction process and design fees, but it's a little more difficult to find a path for small buildings, and this would be something to consider whether or not it's, how that would fit in. So do you develop a REACH code for just big buildings and say, go 10% better? That's an easy way to do it. But it's also, if there's potentially incentive tie-ins or the like with that. So again, one of the other ways to meet it, of course, is to more tied into building energy targets. So an Energy Star has a target, and they have scoring through the Energy Star program of 90. It would want you to get a score of 90 or better as designed. Of course, that program does have some building type limitations, but it's another thing for consideration. So the request to the board from the division today is, are there things that you would look at for that next code? Be thinking about that, so when we come back with ideas, we're just not springing this on you about what is available for incentives. Is there a focus to really look at larger buildings and hit the ones that are using more energy, or have something that's available for smaller buildings? So with that, I'll conclude. And
For the record, Pierre Sabal, Policy Analyst with the Division. Again, thank you, Mark. Just to piggyback off Mark, we hope to bring this informal discussion to the board after the adoption of the OEESC, assuming ComCheck is all good to go in October, and we will do a normal rulemaking process for the commercial REACH code as well. So we'll be holding a RAC, a public hearing, and everything. So this is just some food for thought to think about those upcoming meetings and hearings. Thank you.
Yeah, Thomas.
Any
Kyle.
input?
Sorry, yes, Thomas, Kyle. Mark, one of the incentives that I could see in personal experience from is when the state is either building a building for themselves or renting a building from somebody, if there's a incentive to choose a building that meets one of these codes, or at least is Energy Star efficient in their rules of the GSA for obtaining leases.
thank you. Yes, I believe that DAS, the primary leasing organization, does have some directives to look at current state buildings, at least for what they currently have, and also looking at, future leases they're looking to go for. But I don't have enough of that information right here, but I am aware that they are doing something. And yes, our Department of Energy person can chime in now. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Blake Shelide with the Oregon Department of Energy. Just to speak to the comment or the question around like new state construction. So all new state construction, if it's over a certain size threshold, generally 10,000 square feet, would be classified as what's known as a SEED, State Energy Efficient Design building. And there's a process associated with that where those buildings need to exceed the current energy code by 20% from an energy efficiency perspective. And when a state agency constructs a new building, they generally hire an energy analyst to model, and that's embedded within the entire design process. And all those projects come across our desk at ODE, and we kind of help facilitate that process from an energy efficiency design standpoint to achieve that performance level of 20% better than, more efficient than the energy code.
That's what I thought. Yep. Any other comments? Okay, then we're moving on to communications, and I have none in front of me. Have we received any since this was published? If not, we'll move on to appeals, which there are none. And we have no unfinished business because we are an efficient board. We have no new business. We have no announcements. So I'm going to move to adjourn. Unless anybody has anything else to chime in. Any announcements at all? Hearing none. Hearing none. I'm going to call this the Oregon Construction Industry Energy Board meeting for June 11th, adjourned at 10:02. And thank you all for coming and participating.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.